Okay, in today's lesson, the first thing we're going to start with is 12.3, subtracting rational numbers. You notice I already have 3 reminders written up here for you, so if you want to push pause and take a second to copy those, that might be a good idea. Okay, here we go. So we need to remember that when we subtract integers, we actually add the opposite. For fractions, we need a common denominator, and when we're working with decimals, we need to make sure those decimal points are lined up. Let's try a couple together. Negative 1 1/3 minus 1 2/3. So we need to apply this concept here. Instead of subtracting 1 2/3, we are going to add. So subtraction changes to addition. The opposite of 1 2/3 is negative 1 2/3. I owe you 1 1/3. I owe you 1 2/3. So we're going to add these together to figure out the total amount that we owe. 1/3 and 2/3 is 3/3. 1 and 1 is 2. 3/3 reduces to 1. And 2 plus 1 equals 3. But we can't forget, these are the total amount that we owe, which makes it a negative 3. Number 2. Negative 8 3/8 minus 10 1/8. Same concept applies. Luckily, we already have common denominators. So instead of subtracting 10 1/8, circle your subtraction symbol, we are going to add negative 10 1/8. These are both amounts that we owe, so we're going to add those together to figure out the total that we owe. 3/8 and 1/8 makes 4/8. 10 plus 8 is 18. 18 and 4/8 reduces to 18 1/2. Again, these were both amounts that we owe, which means we owe a total of 18 1/8. Okay, let's apply that same concept to decimals with number 3. Negative 7 3/400 minus negative 5 5700. So sometimes it's helpful to think of these as dollar amounts. And again, we need to apply this concept here. Instead of subtracting, we're going to add the opposite. So drop down your first number. Subtraction changes to addition. And the opposite of negative 5 5700 is a positive. So I owe you $7.34. I only have $5.57. So we need to subtract these two to figure out how much I still owe you. When we subtract, we just need to make sure those decimal points are in a line. I owe more than what I have. So I owe, that got kind of messy, let me rewrite it. I still owe you $1.77. Okay, one last concept to cover here in 12.3. And the directions will read something like, find the distance between the two numbers. When we covered absolute value, we talked about that the distance is always a positive. So please make sure you keep that in mind when working these out. If I gave you an easy example, like find the distance between 10 and 8, well, we would simply subtract 10 and 8 to find that the distance between those is 2. On a number line, it would look something like this. Here's 10, here's 9, here's 8. they're 2 spaces apart. Again, subtraction will tell us how far apart those numbers are. So why don't we jot that into our notes? Subtract to find the distance. Anytime we subtract, whether it's whole numbers, fractions, decimals, you need to make sure you place that bigger number on top, or put that bigger number first. Okay, we're gonna just do 2 examples, one with decimals, one with fractions. So you're gonna be asked to find the distance between 2 and 2/10 and 8 and 4/10. On a number line, it might look something like this. Here's 0, here's 8 and 4/10 way up here, here's -2/10 somewhere around this neighborhood. So really the distance to 0 from -2 and 2/10 would be 2 and 2/10. The distance from 8.4 to 0 would be 8.4. So we would actually have to add these to figure out what the distance is. But Miss Marion already said we're gonna subtract. Well, yeah, here's what it looks like. We always put the bigger number first, 8.4. Here's my subtraction symbol. And the smaller number was -2 and 2/10. Well, let's apply our learning. Subtraction changes to addition. The opposite of 2 and 2/10 is a positive. And when we add those 2 together, they're 10 and 6/10 apart. Okay, last one, number 2 in this section. So now you're gonna be asked to find the distance between -7 and -3 and 2/3. So on a number line, you're gonna notice there's a little bit of a difference. They're both on the same side of 0. -3 and 2/3 would be somewhere in this neighborhood. My number line is not perfectly accurate. It's just to show you that this is the distance that we're looking for. Okay, so 0 is on the right and both of these numbers are on the left. Okay, we're still going to use subtraction to find the distance, and we're still going to place that bigger number on top, or that bigger number first. Well, our bigger number in this case is -3 and 2/3. It's closer to 0. So we would set up our subtraction, -3 and 2/3 minus, our second number is -7, -7. Okay, so instead of subtracting -7, we are going to add the opposite of -7, which is +7. I have 7, I owe 3 and 2/3. We're gonna subtract these to figure out what I have left. So 7 minus 3 and 2/3. Well, we need to borrow, so 7 becomes a 6. 6 and 3/3 is equivalent to 7. 3/3 minus 2/3 is 1/3. 6 minus 3 is 3. I have more than I owe. The distance between them has to be positive, and the distance is 3 and 1/3. Okay, check out the next video for lesson 10.4 on multiplying and dividing.